She checked into the motel on a whim, the neon sign reading Dreamland, beckoning her like a siren's call. It was the kind of place that whispered sweet nothings to lost souls, promising rest and respite from the crushing weight of the world. As she signed the register, the clerk's gaze lingered on her bruised eyes, but he said nothing. A faint scent of stale air clung to the room, a space that seemed to shrink with each passing moment. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows cast by the flickering lamp twisting into dark, grasping fingers. She tossed her suitcase onto the bed, the sound echoing through the stillness like a challenge to the silence. As she undressed, her gaze strayed to the phone on the nightstand, its cord snaking out like a snake slithering through the darkness. She felt an inexplicable urge to call someone, anyone, but the digits blurred together on the keypad like a madman's scribble. The TV, an old beast with a crackling screen, seemed to hum with a strange energy, its static hiss weaving a disquieting melody. With a shiver, she clicked it off, plunging the room into darkness. The Dreamland's neon sign cast its gaudy glow through the window, a distant cousin to the dread that stirred within her. The air was heavy with the promise of rain, or something far more sinister. She crawled into bed, the sheets whispering secrets as she drifted into a restless sleep, the room's dark heart beating in rhythm with her own. When she opened her eyes, the room was bathed in a sickly yellow light, as if the sun had died and left only its decayed remains. The air was thick with moisture, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. She sat up, her heart racing, and rubbed the grit from her eyes. The clock on the nightstand read 3:47, a time that seemed to hold a malevolent significance. As she swung her legs over the side of the bed, her gaze fell on the phone. It was off the hook, the receiver lying on the floor like a small, dead creature. She had no memory of making a call, but the memory of a voice whispered in her ear, low and sweet as a lover's promise. "They're waiting for you," it had said. A shiver crawled up her spine as she replaced the receiver, her fingers lingering on the cool plastic. The room seemed to be watching her, its shadows twitching like restless things. She dressed quickly, her hands shaking as she buttoned her shirt. In the bathroom, the mirror showed her a face she barely recognized, the eyes sunken, the skin sallow. The words "checkout time is 11 a.m." were scrawled on the mirror in red lipstick, a message that seemed to pulse with a malignant energy. She wiped the words away, but they lingered in her mind like a threat. As she opened the door, the neon sign outside seemed to blaze with an otherworldly intensity, beckoning her to some unknown destination. The clerk's smile, when she went to settle her bill, was a thin-lipped thing, a mere stretching of the skin over his teeth. "You enjoyed your stay, I hope?" he asked, his voice dripping with malice. She nodded, her mind reeling. As he handed her a bill with a single item listed, "Dreams $1,000. The figure on the bill seemed to sear itself into her brain, a burning brand of deceit. "I didn't authorize any charges," she protested. But the clerk's smile only grew, a cruel stretching of his face. "Ah, but you did," he purred, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "You signed the register, didn't you? You agreed to the terms." Her mind raced back to the moment she checked in, but the memory was hazy, shrouded in a fog of exhaustion. She recalled no terms, no fine print, only the desperation to escape the darkness that pursued her. "I want to speak to your manager," she demanded, but the clerk's smile only grew, a cold, mirthless thing. "I am the manager," he said, his eyes glinting with a sinister light. "And you, my dear, are a valued customer. You've been upgraded to our premium package. You'll find the amenities enlightening." He handed her a small, cream-colored envelope, the paper textured like skin. Inside, a single keycard glared up at her, embossed with the room number, 1313. "This way, please," the clerk said, his voice dripping with obsequiousness as he led her to the elevator. The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a dimly lit corridor that seemed to stretch on forever. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, and the walls seemed to press in on her, a physical manifestation of her own fear. As the elevator lurched into motion, she felt the weight of the room number, 1313, a number that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The doors closed, and she was plunged into darkness. The only sound the soft, mocking whisper of the clerk's voice, echoing in her mind. "They're waiting for you." The elevator's descent was a slow, agonizing torture, the silence punctuated only by the creaking of the cables and her own ragged breathing. When the doors finally slid open, she stumbled out into a dimly lit corridor, the walls a dingy institutional green. Room 1313 was at the far end of the hall, the door ajar as if waiting for her. She pushed it open, and a warm golden light spilled out, a mocking contrast to the darkness that lurked within. The room was a parody of luxury, the bed a vast, rumpled expanse of silk and velvet. The air was heavy with the scent of perfume and smoke, and the walls seemed to vibrate with the bass line of a distant, pulsing beat. In the center of the room, a figure waited, shrouded in shadows. Her heart racing, she approached, her footsteps echoing off the walls. As she drew closer, the figure slowly came into focus, its features coalescing like a nightmare made flesh. It was her, or at least a twisted, mocking echo of herself. The doppelganger's eyes gleamed with a sinister light, its smile a cruel, lipless thing. "Welcome to your premium package," it said, its voice a perfect, mocking echo of her own. "You're going to love the amenities." As she watched, frozen in horror, the doppelganger began to change, its body contorting, twisting, until it was no longer herself, but a cipher, a symbol, a doorway to some dark and ancient realm. The phone on the nightstand shrilled, a jarring, discordant note that shattered the spell. She turned to answer it, her heart still racing, but the voice on the other end was no longer the clerk's. "Checkout time is never," it whispered, the words crawling like insects across her skin. "You'll never leave." The line went dead, the silence that followed a palpable, living thing. She slammed the receiver down, the sound echoing through the room like a scream. As she turned back to the doppelganger, she saw that it had changed again, its body shifting, flowing like molten wax, its face elongated, the features morphing into a grotesque parody of a smile. The air seemed to thicken, the shadows deepening, twisting into strange, organic shapes. The room was a maze, and she was trapped, lost in a labyrinth of her own darkest fears. The doppelganger began to speak, its voice a gentle, seductive whisper. "You've been here before," it said. "You'll never leave." The words seemed to unlock a hidden memory, a door creaking open in her mind. She saw herself, standing in this very room, the same doppelganger, the same. The vision shattered, leaving her gasping, her heart racing. The doppelganger's smile grew, its eyes glinting with an otherworldly intelligence. "Remember?" it asked, its voice a cruel, mocking echo of her own. She shook her head, denying the horror that lurked within. But the doppelganger only laughed, the sound a cold, mirthless thing. "You'll remember," it said, its voice dripping with malevolent intent. "You'll remember, and you'll never forget." As she watched, frozen in horror, the doppelganger began to change, its body contorting, twisting, until it was no longer a parody of herself, but something else, something ancient, evil, and eternal. The thing that was once her doppelganger now loomed over her, its presence filling the room with an unholy energy. Its eyes burned with an otherworldly fire, and its smile seemed to draw her in, a mesmerizing horror that made her skin crawl. She tried to step back, but her feet seemed rooted to the spot, unable to move as the creature began to speak in a voice that was both familiar and yet utterly alien. "You should have taken the hint," it said, its words dripping with malice. "You should have checked out when you had the chance." The room seemed to be shrinking, the walls closing in on her as the creature's words echoed in her mind. She felt herself being pulled back through time, to the moment when she first checked into the Dreamland Motel. Memories flooded her mind, fragmented and disjointed, like snapshots from a twisted photo album. She saw herself, checking in, tired and desperate, unaware of the horrors that lurked in the shadows. She saw the clerk's smile, the neon sign, the endless corridors of the motel's labyrinthine layout. And then she saw the truth. She saw the Dreamland Motel for what it was: a trap, a prison, a portal to some dark and ancient realm where souls were currency, and terror was the only currency that mattered. The creature leaned in, its hot, rank breath in her face, as it whispered a single, chilling word: mine. In that moment, she knew she was trapped, forever cursed to roam the endless corridors of the Dreamland Motel, forever bound to the horrors that lurked within.